So that's the idea of, on that night, the sleep of the king was disturbed, which implies that the idea of that night is what causes the sleep of the king to be disturbed. Because the idea of that night represents the idea of the concealment, which comes from the essence and the essential core of the creator, which is not limited to concealment in revelation. So what is the idea of the night? What's the source of the idea of the concealment? Why does the creator conceal himself, in other words? So it says that the idea of the concealment of the creator has two main purposes. One purpose is in order that there should be a revelation in the world afterwards. Meaning, if Hashem would just allow his light to shine infinitely everywhere at all times, then it says that everything would be included in an essential state of unity, and then nothing would be manifested and realized for an independent existence. So the purpose of the concealment is in order that there should be independent existences, independent people who can realize on their own the idea of the creator, and then through them realizing the existence of the creator, then they themselves could have the ability to draw down the infinite light of the creator into the universes itself, which is why the creator gave us the Torah, which the Torah is the tool that is used to draw down the infinite light into the world itself, as opposed to having the infinite light just shine everywhere infinitely, which would nullify all the worlds from existence. So that's one reason for why the creator conceals himself, why the creator hides himself from creation, is in order to have independent existences, and specifically people, humans, who have the ability to recognize with their mind that there's a creator in the world, and through the individual people realizing the creator on their own and doing the service of the Torah and the mitzvahs, then that brings the infinite light of the creator into the world itself. That's one reason for the concealment of the creator. But then a second reason for the concealment of the creator is not necessarily only to have a revelation of the light into towards the self. It's the idea of the concealment itself, meaning it's a revelation of how the creator is not limited and not forced to only shine light, because one might think that the creator is only that which shines light, which that's not true, because the creator is not limited in any way at all. The creator is the completeness of everything. The creator is not limited in any way. The creator is not limited to shine light. So the idea of the concealment is the power the creator has to conceal himself, which that itself is an infinite power of the creator, the infinite potential of the creator that's not limited to light. It also has the idea of the concealment, which it's not necessarily for the concealment, for the sake of the concealment. It's the idea of the concealment for itself, in order to reveal the infinite essential power of the creator to conceal himself, which is an infinite power, the infinite potential of the creator. So that's the two ideas of the concealment itself. So it's explained in the commentaries that those two ideas of the concealment correspond to the two ideas of this night and that night. Because the idea of this night, when people realize the night is night, when people realize the exile is an exile, and they want to go out of the exile because they have a thirst for the creator, and they feel the desire to leave the darkness, to do the mitzvahs, etc., then that's the idea of this night, when they can openly realize the creator is hidden. So that corresponds to the first reason for the concealment, which the purpose of the concealment is only in order to have the revelation of the light into the worlds. Because in order to have that purpose, people have to realize it's a concealment. And through realizing the concealment is a concealment, then that ignites within their soul the desire to go out of the concealment and do the Torah and mitzvahs, which draws down the infinite light to the world. That's the idea of this night, when people realize the night is night, because that corresponds to the first reason of why the creator conceals himself, in order to have the revelation of the light into the worlds, into the finite beings. So that's the idea of this night. In order to have that revelation of Hashem into the world through the concealment, people have to realize the concealment. And when they realize the concealment, then they can go out of the concealment. But the second aspect of the creator, which is the idea of concealing himself, in order to reveal the hidden infinite power of the creator, which has the ability to conceal himself, meaning to show that Hashem is not, the creator is not limited into anything, not limited to give light. The creator could be revealed and hidden. So that's the idea of the second reason why the creator conceals himself, in order to reveal the infinite power of the concealment of the creator. In order to manifest the idea that the creator is not limited to shine, the creator could do anything. So that's the idea of the second reason of the concealment, to bring out the infinite aspect of the essence, the essential core of the creator that's not limited by anything, that could conceal itself. So that's the idea of the second aspect of the concealment, which represents that night, which is the idea that even the night itself is hidden because people don't even realize the concealment, which that's the idea of the concealment of the concealment, which is the essential potential of the concealment of the Creator, which is the second reason why the Creator conceals himself. So that's the idea of that night, which is the essential core of the power the Creator has to conceal himself, which that is not necessarily for the sake of having revelation afterwards. So therefore, it's not needed that the concealment should be felt, because when the concealment is felt, then that ignites within people the desire to leave the concealment and do the mitzvahs and draw down the infinite light into the world, as explained. But this second aspect, which is the concealment of the concealment, is not for the purpose of having the light revealed into the world. It's the idea of the concealment being revealed in the world. It's the idea of bringing out the potential of the concealment of the Creator. And that's why it's expressed in a way where even the concealment is concealed, because it's a double concealment, because it's the essential concealment of the Creator, which is the power to conceal himself, which is the idea that the Creator is not limited to shine, but the Creator could also not shine. The Creator could also hide himself. So that's the idea of that night, where even the concealment itself is concealed. So simply, in simple words, the idea of this night, which is the open manifestation of the concealment of the night, and the idea of that night, which represents how the concealment, the night itself, is hidden. So that is in an opposite way for how they are in their original sources. Meaning, what does that mean? So in the original source, the idea of that night is the higher level, because it's the higher aspect of Hashem, the greater aspect of Hashem, which has the ability to conceal the concealment, which that represents the greater level, the higher level, as opposed to this night in the original source, which the idea of this night, where the night itself is openly revealed to be night, that represents the lesser aspect of Hashem's concealment, the lower level of the concealment. So the idea of that night in the original source is a greater power, so to speak, metaphorically. Obviously, everything in the Creator is infinite, but it's metaphorically, so to speak, such a greater idea than the idea of this night, because this night is the open manifestation of the night, as opposed to that night, which is a higher concealment of the night. So that's in the original source of the two ideas. But when those two ideas come down into the lower worlds, meaning into this world and the other worlds, when they come down from the original source, then they are in the opposite order, because the idea of that night, when the concealment is concealed, that's the lowest of the low. That's the lowest level of the exile itself, where people don't even realize the exile is exile. That's the lowest of the low. But it comes from the highest of the high, the highest level, which is the concealment of the concealment, which is the power that the Creator has to conceal the concealment, which in the source, it's a really strong power. But when it comes down into this world and the other worlds, it's the idea of the lowest level, because the concealment itself is concealed. That's the lowest of the low. So as opposed to this night, which that represents the idea when people realize that the night is night, when people realize the concealment is a concealment. That's not such a low level as the idea of that night, where the concealment itself is concealed. Because the idea of this night, when they at least realize the concealment is there, that's a slightly higher, greater level. That's how it comes into this world. But that's opposite to how it is in the original source, because in the original source, the idea of this night represents the basic level of concealment, the concealment that is for the sake of revelation, which is not such a concealment because it's only for the sake of a revelation. So the idea of the concealment, the power behind the concealment, is not as strong as the idea of that night in the original source, which represents the power of the concealment itself, the concealment of the concealment, which represents the highest of the high, the greatest level. In the source, it's the greatest. But when it comes down into this world, it's the lowest of the low. So what does that mean? So the idea of this night, where the concealment itself is revealed, the purpose of that is in order for people to have a thirst for the Creator, to go out of the darkness. That shows that in this world, there's higher consciousness of the darkness, which represents a greater level in this world, in this manifestation, in this perspective, in the lower perspective. It's the idea of the concealment, which is for the sake of the revelation, which in order to have the concealment for the revelation, it's necessary that the concealment itself should be felt by people such that they realize it's a concealment and then have the thirst to go out of the concealment. So that's the idea that in this world, it's a greater level, meaning it's closer to the revelation of light, so to speak. It's closer to revelation because it's a concealment which is for the purpose of revelation. So in this world, it's greater, but in the original source, it's a lesser form of concealment because the higher level of concealment, the idea of that night, represents the essential power of concealment, the essential concealment of the Creator, which is concealed, the aspect of the Creator that is completely beyond the world, which is the greater level. But that's in the source. But when it comes down into this world, it comes into the lowest of the low, such that people don't even realize the concealment is there in the first place. So that's the idea of the concealment for the sake of the concealment, meaning the concealment in order to bring out the essential aspect of the essential hidden, concealed essence of the Creator. That comes down into this world, into the idea of that night, such that the concealment itself isn't concealed, which in the simple service level, that's at the end of the exile, which is the lowest of the low, where people don't even